I heard John MacArthur say one of the dumbest things. He said, God has stopped talking. I thought that has to be one of the most ignorant things I think I've ever heard a minister say. What is it? God went mute? He can't talk anymore? Now, I know some of you say, well, no, I think he means that God stopped talking because of the Bible he's given to us. Listen, I believe the Bible is God's complete, authoritative, written word for us. And any current speaking of God is definitely not going to contradict what he spoke already in the past. I agree with that. But John MacArthur denies that God speaks to us today. If he doesn't speak to us today, how will we get saved? Because faith cometh by hearing the word of God. Even Paul writes in Hebrews, if you hear his voice, do not harden your heart. God is speaking to us today. He speaks, yes, out of the written word, but he does provide us revelation from that written word. But God is still a talking God. Now, some of you might say, well, Bishop, why are you bringing his name? Well, first of all, he brought up my name in one of his books. And in fact, he brought it up my name twice in one of his books. So if he wants to use my name and criticize me, well, I'll just go ahead and have a conversation with him back. The point is, God does speak. Now, when we say God speaks, he can speak a prophecy saying God might guide you to marry or show you who you should marry, or that you should take this job, or that you should, go to this city. God talks to us all the time, and he speaks through prophecies. But those are personal things that God says to you that is not going to contradict the Bible. For example, if God speaks to you, you think he spoke to you to marry someone already married, that's not the voice of God, because that's contradictory. But to say God stopped talking or that the gifts of the Spirit are passed away, wrong. Now, somebody might say, well, John MacArthur is simply saying God doesn't give present revelation. Well, first of all, he does. And number two, John MacArthur evidently thinks God has given him personal revelation because he thinks God has showed him that God no longer does miracles anymore. He no longer heals the sick anymore. He no longer has the gift of prophecy in the church anymore. God has stopped that, according to John MacArthur. But that's not a revelation supported by the written word of God. There's nothing in it. Now, John MacArthur might argue, as well as any anti-Pentecostal, they might say that it was the apostles that had the gift of healing and the working of miracles. Friend, they did, but they were not the only ones. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians chapter 12 that God has set in the church, watch what he says, apostles and prophets. But what does he also say? He also has given those with gifts of healings and those with working of miracles.